There's a story to be told, a future to behold. There is more to who we are than what they hear. We have love within our soul, fire in our bones. We've got everything it takes to make it here. There's much more within our soil, more than just our oil. We can grow the food to feed the whole world square. Agriculture is the key. There's treasure in the trees. The time is now, the land is green, wealth is here. This is our nation, this is our land. Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, wealth is here. There are 200 billion dreams. Any one of these is able to begin us back and change the world. There's innovation everywhere, from Aba to Ife to Kaduna. The land is green, the wealth is here. Yeah, this is our nation, this is our land. Yeah. Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, the wealth is here.
If you take a look around from the north to south, there are opportunities to make it here. But if all you ever dream is to go overseas, tell me how you'll ever know that wealth is here. Oh, yeah,
This is our nation, this is our land. Oh, Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, the wealth is here. So pass on the baton, pass on the torch. Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, the wealth is here. Oh yeah. So this is our nation, this is our land. Oh yeah. Nigeria is ours. We have everything we need. If we could only see, the time is now, the land is green, wealth is here.
What sector has enough potential to cater for the growing population in Nigeria? What sector is bubbling with diverse and profitable opportunities? What sector can enhance the Nigerian economy and propel you to thrive? How can you tap into this sector? Be a part of the Business of Agriculture Masterclass, coming up from the 5th to 7th of July 2021. 3 days, 9 sessions, 15 speakers, and 7 value chains. Tap into profitable opportunities in agriculture, build wealth, achieve financial freedom. Visit www.businessofagriculture.org and register for the free Business of Agriculture Masterclass, designed to make you think agri. This is brought to you by the Private Sector Advisory Group of the UN SDG Fund.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the final session of day 2 of the inaugural Business of Agriculture Masterclass. Welcome to the session on the business of agro-processing and value addition. I am Olabode Abikoye, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Generally, Nigeria and indeed Africa exports primary raw materials and imports processed or finished products that are sometimes 10 times the raw material costs. The African Development Bank estimates that 62% of Africa's exports are primary products, indicating the weakness and the untapped opportunities yet to be fully explored in processing or value addition. For example, Africa earns 5.5% of the 100 billion cocoa trade, despite accounting for 75% of the world's cocoa supplies. A similar story applies to coffee, cotton, amongst other varieties of products exported in their raw states to industrialized countries for processing. It is reiterated by governments and development partners that for Africa to earn more and develop through trade, it must process its raw materials to high-value semi-finished and finished products. This session will provide a detailed context on the business opportunities in the agro-processing value chain and offer insights on what is required to start a thriving agricultural enterprise. We'll go on a short break now, and when we are back, we'll explore more on the agro-processing and value addition segments of the agricultural value chain in Nigeria. Welcome back. Before we go to the panel discussion, I will give an overview of the business of agro-processing and value addition. Our technical team will project slides for you to follow as I present the primer. Agriculture is entirely a value addition industry, transforming seeds and seedlings to raw produce and raw produce to semi-finished products or finished products for human consumption as food and to animal consumption as feed or industrial consumption as raw materials for further production. By value addition, we refer to the activity or combination of activities that improve the economic value of a commodity in the market through manual processes or technology-enabled processes in conformity with globally acceptable standards. These processes transform a product from its raw state to a desired state with or without a complete change of form. By merely changing the state of a raw material, of a raw produce, the market is expanded and more value captured. Examples of such change in form, including the drying, roasting, boiling, crushing, freezing, packaging, extracting, cooling, grinding, or processing of agricultural produce. Let us look at the business of agro-processing within the context of the African business environment. Over the past 15 years, there has been improvement in the ease of doing business in sub-Saharan Africa, owing to a series of reforms embarked upon in the region. Notwithstanding, there is still a lot of gap to cover to make it easier and attractive to do business in Africa. The population growth rate in Africa is estimated at 2.5% per annum, which is a major indicator of the productive and consumptive market size. By merely changing the state of a raw produce, the market is expanded and more value captured. Poor access to power, burdensome regulatory requirements, poor transportation infrastructure, port congestion, and high level of insecurity, just to mention a few, are some of the issues to be addressed in order to improve the business environment in Africa. An estimation of the size of the agro-processing and value addition market. It is estimated that African farmers grow nearly 57% of the world's cashew production, for example, but less than 15% of this output is deshelled on African soil. The rest is exported mainly to Asia, where 85% of the world's cashew is deshelled, which adds value to the commodity. Just two Asian nations, India and Vietnam, accounted for about 98% of the world's raw cashew importation cashew imports between 2014 and 2018. In 2018, for example, the export price of cashew kernels from India to the European Union was about 3.5 times higher than what was paid for cashew farmers in Côte d'Ivoire, a 250% difference in price. And after secondary processing in the EU, the price of cashew kernels was about 2.5 times higher than when exported from India, and about 8.5 times more than when they left the farm in Côte d'Ivoire. This income loss can only be addressed through investment in value addition. The global market for sesame seeds is expected to grow at 4.2% compound annual growth rate, CAGR, between 2018 and 2024. The commodity has numerous health and industrial benefits and is widely used for baking, medicine, cosmetics, and animal feeds. It also has a high content of oil, 40 to 60%, considering its health benefits and the growing preference for organic foods. The demand is likely to continue to grow, but the real value is locked in the processing of value addition. This means that the focus on export of raw commodities has to shift to processing. Estimating the size of the agro-processing and value addition markets, Africa currently accounts for more than 70% of the total global cocoa production, despite being the largest producer. Africa accounts for less than 21% of the total global cocoa processing markets. The global market was valued at $11 billion in 2020 and is projected to hit $13.52 billion in 2026. But on the contrary, the global chocolate market in 2020 was valued at $138.5 billion and is expected to grow to $200.4 billion by 2028. The real value in cocoa is in the value addition. The global consumption of milled rice is estimated at about 414 million metric tons, catering to the food needs of over 3.5 billion people. About 84% of global consumption of milled rice is in Asia, while consumption in sub-Saharan Africa is projected to grow at 22% by 2026, hitting 34 million metric tons. The demand to supply gap of the milled rice across Africa is about 15 million metric tons, which is usually filled by imports from Asia. We will take a break now, and after the break, I will introduce our panelists who will help to throw more light on the topic in discourse. They will be addressing topical issues like the right agro-processing agribusiness to venture into, understanding the agro-processing markets, agro-processing opportunities in the circular markets, starting an agro-processing agribusiness, and investing in an agro-processing agribusiness. In the meantime, we'll take a short break. Welcome back. I would like to introduce our panelists. We have a number of experts with us today to analyze the agro-processing value chain in Nigeria and the business opportunities that exist in it. Our first panelist, Mr. Eugene Itua, the CEO of Natural Eco Capital, is the thematic lead of the circular economy and natural resources of the Sustainability Policy Commission of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Mr. Itua is also a member of the College of Research Associates, United Nations University Institute for Natural Resources in Africa. He is coordinator of the West African Capitals Coalition Hub and team lead for the first long-term low emissions development vision for Nigeria, in line with the Paris Agreement by 2020 Pathway Platform. Mr. Itua, we are glad to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Let me start by asking you a couple of questions, Mr. Itwa. We have variously heard about the circular economy, from which we are advising a number of young entrants into the agriculture business to seek to benefit. Can you please explain in brief what the circular economy is about?
Thank you very much, the organizers and our great moderator, and for the opportunity given to speak very briefly on circular economy. Just to say that over the years, all of us have used resources, natural resources. We continue to use resources. And indeed, as those in the agricultural sector, this is our main raw material. In fact, without these natural resources, no person can live. You cannot feed our nation, just as you cannot feed yourself without these resources. For the past years, right from the Industrial Revolution period, we had operated what we call the linear economy. The linear economy seems to have brought untold hardship to mankind. Today, we talk about a number of negative impacts on human lives. Do you want to look at the climate dimension, climate impacts, or resource degradation? The health impact. We are grappling with COVID now. It is said that because man had interfered with nature, that is why we're having these challenges. And indeed, if we continue in this same manner, we have been told, and it's been proven, that we will run out of the resources. So if we run out of resources, how are we going to continue living? Indeed, we're told we need about 3 extra planets to support us. But of course, we know we do not have opportunity to have such. We would have gone beyond the planetary boundaries in supporting our activities. Of course, man has tried as much as possible to see if there is life beyond this planet, but of course there is none. And so the idea of a sustainable development has come in. We have seen the challenges of poverty, hunger, name it. You're in this, I learned people had talked about food and nutrition yesterday, insecurity of such, limited access to social services. Now, taking us out of that linear economy pathway, we're going to what we call the circular economy, closing the loop. This idea is based on the fact that, look, we have finite stock of natural resources. And interestingly, these natural resources regenerate. But when we continue to use them and abuse them, the power to regenerate is lost. So the idea of now closing the loop comes in. The idea of designing waste out of our activities comes in. So in other words, the idea of circular economy is based on the fact that, look, the resources we use, take, use, and return. Unlike the linear economy principle that I'll tell you, take, use, and dispose. The returning of the circular economy ensures that the resources we have in nature continue to regenerate. So that is the simple and straightforward thing or way I want to explain that very the circular economy that you had asked me about.
Okay, thank you very much for that intervention. Secondly, can you please, for the benefit of our participants, give us a sense of what the opportunities are in the circular economy for agro-processing and entrance into the agro-processing segment of the agriculture value chain?
Thank you very much for Ross in the agricultural sector, I think there's a beautiful way we can enter this. But beyond that, first and foremost, we talk about inputs into the agricultural production. Can we close the loop of, for instance, that of nutrient use? Can we also look at the waste we generate? I'll just quickly give an example of post-harvest losses. I'll also give an example of other side stream that we generate. Looking at the opportunity very briefly. The side stream, for instance, when you cultivate cocoa, eventually you take the seeds. What happened to the pods? They are thrown away. But we do know, for instance, this can actually be used, and indeed people have been using it. Traditionally, people have used this to make black soap. Can we scale that up? That is an opportunity. In other words, you would have designed out waste in your cocoa production. Let's put it that way. Cultivation / harvesting of the cocoa pod and then bringing out the seeds. I just give that as an example. That would earn you more money as a farmer. Look at it from another dimension. Today, we are just preparing gas to liquid feasibility proposal for a client. And the idea for this client is to use the side stream of agriculture. Look at cassava, the cassava peels. Look at all the cocoa pod I just talked about, palm fronds, and so on and so forth. What he wants to do is to bring out gas. We have called it gas to liquid. And the idea is to feed vehicles with the gas that is going to bring, the fuel is going to bring out from that. That is an opportunity. A number of us have access to all of this. I'm just trying to, as much as possible, put it in that form that all of us can actually identify with. Indeed, farmers have always, like I've said before, associated with nature. If you have associated with nature, remember the use of humus. I'm just going back to those little things. The way you make your humus and indeed use it to fertilize your plant. Today, we're looking for synthetic fertilizer. But back then, we could use this. And indeed, the crops came out very good. You talked about value addition. Valorization of waste are tangible opportunity for you in this sector. This waste you generate, what meaningful thing can you put into? That is the opportunity circular economy gives you. A number of us talk about reuse, a number of us talk about recycling, and so on and so forth. All of these are based on the principle of circular economy. So in other words, there are a whole lot of opportunities that we can actually take on and boost our income when it comes to this issue of circular economy. I think I just want to give you that.
Okay, thank you very much. A final question. How does what you do in sustainability, what Eco Capital does, how does it support the business of agribusiness and agro-processing? One of the objectives of this masterclass is also to be able to direct our participants to where they can seek help that can support their ability, for example, to fund their transactions, to fund their businesses in becoming viable businesses. How does what your company do? And we'll still ask you for payment for free advertisement of Eco Capital somewhere down the line. But for the purpose of this discourse, how does what you do in sustainability, how does it support businesses, particularly young businesses that are looking to grow? How does it support them in putting together the right kind of proposition that can be bankable and that can also have value to the market? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just quickly, one of the things that we do is to support organizations in assisting them to look at the climate risk of their activities and, of course, the opportunities therein. And just to let you know that we just developed what we call climate risk and opportunity screening toolkit for African Development Bank, focusing on the SMEs in Africa. The idea is to be able to support especially the SMEs. Take note that African continent and indeed Nigeria is dominated by SMEs. And a number of these SMEs do not have access to such funds for its climate finance. What we are doing is to assist the organizations that are interested to have this mainstream in their activities, to help them prepare their proposals in a manner that they can actually look at the environmental benefits, they can look at the social benefit, and indeed economic benefit, taking it from the sustainability angle. That's the simple thing, again, I can say. There's a whole lot. We can assist you to develop, we just talked about circular economy. We can actually assist you to develop a business plan focusing on circular economy and the opportunities therein. So in other words, there's so much we can do. And just to quickly let you know, even now, I don't think there's actually any other sector that needs the idea of what we call natural capital accounting or assessment than any other sector. I think the agricultural sector needs it more because you interfere with nature here and there. But how can you take nature on? How can you use natural capital assessment framework or approach to boost what you're doing? We can also support you in that. And this is a new thing. Only this year, at the beginning, I think that was in March, for the first time, what we call the UN actually adopted that system of approach, mainstream by at least 34 countries in the world. And it's a growing thing. And organizations are taking that on. For the climate change, you already know, it is given that when you have that mainstream in your processes, you get funding. We're also supporting developing ESG, environmental and social governance criteria. One of the development banks in Nigeria, we're supporting them today to rearrange the environmental and social management system so that they can be more effective in giving out money and supporting the participative financial institutions. So just to say that's a whole lot that we're doing. And on that front of the instrument that we have designed, about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, in conjunction with African Development Bank, as well as Association of Development Finance Institutions, we were training development banks in Africa on this, on climate finance. So a whole lot that we can support the agricultural sector in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Itwa. I'm sure our participants have benefited substantially from your contribution. We will direct their questions to you as appropriate. Our next panelist is Mrs. Missy Rawley, the Managing Director and Chief Executive of Sultry International Company Limited. Ms. Rawley has worked as an agro processor for more than 18 years with good knowledge of mechanized cassava farming and processing. She presently manages over 6,000 hectares of cassava plantation for her outgrower and company backup farms. She also is a specialist in organizing farmers into groups, of outgrowers. Mrs. Rawley has built her success on an inclusive business model that places smallholder farmers at the center of operations. Sultry currently transforms cassava into food-grade starch, high-quality cassava flour, and is the first to produce cassava-based sorbitol in Africa. Sultry International concentrates on strengthening the capacity of its employees, which have more than doubled since 2013 to nearly 300, 40% of whom are women. Ms. Rawley, you are very welcome to this session. Ms. Rawley, you are muted. Ms. Rawley, you are muted. Hello. Okay, you're muted.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you were supposed to unmute me from that end. I couldn't unmute myself. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, madam. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank God.
Good, good. It's very nice to see you again.
Yeah,
I would like you to, yes, it's been a while. I'd like you to speak from the perspective of an operator, somebody who is actually in the trenches and walking the talk of agricultural processing. For a young entrepreneur looking to enter into the value addition and processing segments of the agricultural value chain, what are the basic criteria? What are the principles that such a person should be willing to observe and pay attention to in setting up an agro-processing enterprise?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Labode. It's nice meeting you again. To set up an agri enterprise in Nigeria, any young person that is looking at that should first of all ask himself or herself, what exactly is my interest? Do I like animals? Do I like the soil? Do I want to do soilless? There are different types of agriculture. It's not just hoe and cutlass. These days, agriculture have actually gone beyond a lot of the ways we know it to be. So you first of all ask yourself, what is my interest? If you are the type that like animals, then don't go into crops at all. If you are the type that don't like to be dirty, please don't go into the farms, because you can still do different type of agriculture that don't have to keep your hand dirty on the soil. You could decide to process directly. You could decide to grow animals. You could try to do snaring. You could decide to do crops if you are the type that like crops. If you are very impatient, please go for the 3-month crops like tomatoes and vegetables. If you are somebody who can, I'm in between patient and not patient, you could do crops like cassava. If you're a very patient person, please go and do cocoa and cashew and the like. So your personality and the kind of person you are will determine the type of agriculture you want to go into. So agriculture these days is so wide. If you are very technological driven, you could do soilless. You could just take one room in your house and just do a soilless vegetable farm, soilless tomato farm, hydroponic, or any of those ones that are out there now that uses just small space. So it depends on how adventurous are you, what is really your interest, your personality. All of this will help you to pick the type of agriculture you want to go into, starting from seed to finished product. And I'll tell you the truth, agriculture is way beyond what we think it used to be. It's really, 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 really very far now. There's hardly anything on your table that is not agriculture. Your paper is agriculture. Your table is agriculture. The ink is agriculture, because the table is coming from wood. The paper is coming from pulp. It's coming from cassava peels and all of that. Your ink is coming from where? So a whole lot of things that you can transform. And you could also say, no, I don't want to. I like to be dirty. Then you go crop. You go grow it. Oh, I love animals. Then you go do cows. You go do goats. You go do snails and all of that. You can decide to do fertilizer and just use worms. Grow your worms and get all the peels and do organic. So there's a whole lot of things that you can go into in agricultural space. However, your personality, who you are, the kind of things that move you and excite you will help you and guide you on the very type of agriculture you should go into.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Rawley. I I have benefits of viewing you from behind the screen because I've known you for a couple of years. I know you are a notable entrepreneur in the agricultural value chain, and there are certain lessons to be gleaned from your experience. Because when we are speaking to young people to come into this space, we're also implicitly telling them a number of things that are not told to them up front. We have spoken earlier on in the presentation of the primer that I did, that the ease of doing business in sub-Saharan Africa has improved substantially over time. But that perspective is different between the smallholder and the large established commercial and industrial corporations that are involved in agriculture. So when it comes to little issues like the ease of doing business, the laws and regulations around the acquisition and the operation of agricultural land, the dealing with a substantially unstructured market of smallholders for the dependency of your raw material inputs, the ability to access market profitably, so that you are not in it just for the romance of being involved in agriculture. What are the guidances you will give to young entrants into the agricultural landscape in terms of how best they can navigate an environment such as ours and remain profitable in doing agribusiness?
Okay.
From your own experience.
Very much. Yeah, this is a very, very important question that is supposed to help a young entrepreneur that is just coming into this space. Let me first of all say that agriculture is not for small boys. So if you know you are a chicken liver, lily liver, you easily give up, please don't do it. However, if you are someone who believes in transforming something into something else, you enjoy to see something grow, and you are a patient person, agriculture is for you. Now, if you are a patient person, agriculture is for you. That's my first warning, because agriculture in Nigeria is slightly different from agriculture in other parts of the world. However, agriculture in Nigeria can be very, very far rewarding also when you get it really right. I'll give an example of what the farmers went into last year. I mean, the farmers spent like 200,000 to be making 2 million naira last year. So it can really be boom, and you make so much money. And sometimes it will throw you down. So I will try to guide you on what you should do for it not to throw you down. If you want to go into, from my own experience, the first thing I did was to look for land. I could have gone to government to get land, but I chose to use the community method to get land because I saw that from my experience in my other life before I became an entrepreneur. When you get land from government, sometimes getting the farmers to release the land to you is a real tall ball game. Maybe because the farmers are not properly enumerated by government, or maybe because the papers and the issues were not properly settled between government and the landowners before government acquired. Most of the time you find out that you are struggling and you are wasting so much time before you can acquire, eventually take over the land. So what I did was to go to look for a community that have land and spoke to them directly, and then paid this farmer, the community directly, promised them development, and I went to government to rectify the land. And I have found this over and over again, the best method. That is not to say you cannot get land from government. Please, you can't get land from government. It depends on how patient you are. There are different methods. This was the method I used. I met the community, spoke with the community, had several meetings with them. I could put a face. I could put a face to the people I was dealing with. If it was going to be so tough, I would have known and backed out on time and go to another community. So I was able to feel their pulse. Eventually, I paid over 3 years, little. So for every time I pay, I get to know more details. So because the money is not paid all at once, I'm able to, if anybody comes in and say, oh, when they shared the money the last time, I was not shared. Oh, don't worry, the money is not finished yet. And then you get a bid. And that was how eventually I was able to get all the land, cleared it, and then here we are today. And then, of course, went to the government to do my survey, got my red copy, and then got a CFO. And that is the method I've always used, and it has always worked for me. The other method would be go to government, get the land. The government tells you to take over the land. Then you now do enumeration and all of that and all of that. So any of the method you find very easy to do is okay for you. Now, in terms of going further from there, the next thing was to go get money from the bank to be able to do what I wanted to do. I had decided on the crop to do. Like I said, you must decide on what type of agriculture you want to do. So I had decided I wanted to work with cassava, and I wanted to work with the people. I also want to work with growers. So part of my land was given to farmers to farm on, and farmers also farmed on their own land. Now, this was a choice. You also have to determine, do I want to do my cropping myself? Do you want other people to do my cropping for you? Now, if you're going into processing, better you mix the two, because Nigerian value chain is not yet very structured to the point where you can relax and say, ABC is farming for me. Hey, tomorrow they just decide not to honor that contract and you're in a mess. So if you do a blend of 50-50, if they don't honor the contract to 100%, you have your own 50% to back up on. If they honor it to 100%, you're able to increase your capacity. So I will always say do a and having your own backup. And eventually, as your confidence increase, you can now drop your own backup and go into processing if you want to go into processing. If it's just growing, please look for the market. The market is very key. You can't jump into agriculture without looking at the market. Let's say you want to do tomatoes, for example. You must ask yourself, do I want to go and sell in Oyigbo market? Do I want to go and sell in my 12? Or do I want to take it to ShopRite? So you ask yourself that question and answer honestly. You could say, oh, I don't have the capacity to go to ShopRite, so I want to start with Oyigbo market. That is how you can start. And then you now have a plan to grow into organized marketing, of going into the supermarket or even doing export of the tomatoes. You can do it gradually. Have a plan and know that I'm going to start exporting tomatoes, but I will start today by selling in Oyigbo market in basket. So you go to Oyigbo market and become a businesswoman. Wear your short and t-shirt and go and learn the art of selling tomatoes in Oyigbo market. So you will understand that when I produce the tomato, how does it get to Oyigbo? How do they buy it? Do they do Isakole? Who buys from me? Am I selling to a third party? Am I going to stay there and sell myself? Am I getting a third party to do it for me? You need to go learn, be the apprentice, keep your hand there so you understand how to sell. If you produce and you don't sell, you are in a mess. So you must produce and understand the value chain of how to dispose of your product. If you want to go into the organized setting where you are producing, say, let's say maize, and you've cleaned the maize and you've done maize chips or maize meal, you want to sell it to Nestle, for example, then you need to get Nestle to give you their C of A, and then you are producing to the quality of the kind of maize that Nestle will take. So whichever one you want to do, before you jump into it, market, you must secure your market. When you are not securing market, you are producing to meet a particular market, including variety to plant, including what to sell must be to a particular segment of your market. This way, you will not be frustrated. Even if price goes up, you have already negotiated, you've edged your price somehow. You have an idea of, I invest $1 million, I should be making 1.5 million based on the yield I'm budgeting and the prices I've already secured, or the prices I see that is happening out there. So for me, it's about knowing step by step what you want to do, and take it slowly and gently, and then you'll be there. You might want to be the biggest exporter of tomato, start from being the smallest, and start from being the biggest from your village, and then from your village to your state, from your state to your region, from your region to Nigeria, and then you can be the biggest in Africa and then in the world. So for me, for young people, that you are starting small does not mean, oh, you're not going to be the biggest tomato seller. Sorry to keep using tomato, I just had to pick a crop. But then start somewhere, start thinking big and grow big.
Thanks a lot, Mrs. Rawley. Thanks a lot, Mrs. Rawley. You've actually, in addressing that, you've addressed my next question, which is very critical, because I believe that everything begins and ends in the marketplace. You have spoken about how MSMEs should approach the issue of the market, because it is closely tied to issues around how they can access finance to fund their enterprises. It is when the providers of finance see their ability to generate repayment cash flows that they'll be willing to grant them exposures to do and expand their business. But let me ask a question on top of that. At the MSME, a lot of times there have been complaints at the MSME stage about multiple taxations and how that affects the ability of businesses, particularly small businesses, to be able to carry on their trades. What has been your experience in at operating, because you are not an MSME anymore anyway, you are a large corporation now. But when you were starting off and when you were growing the business, what was your experience of the tax regime in terms of how we affected a small business to be able to grow and aspire to grow bigger?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good question for beginners. There's a lot of double taxation in Nigeria, and that's, we have to tell ourselves the truth. You have to prepare for it. I'm not going to scare anyone to say, oh, because there's double taxation, don't go into it. No, it's part of the, let me say, it's part of the life you have to live. So you just have to find the way to add it to your cost. Don't blind your eyes to the fact that those things are not there. They are there. But you need to tell yourself the truth and say, even though my production cost is 2 naira, but it is 2 naira 50 kobo, because this 50 kobo is a must, I must pay. Let me give you an example. The kind of double taxation we get in cassava, for example, is you produce the cassava, the farmer is bringing from the farm. Between the farm and our factory, he's going to pay association. We collect their own cassava association, or the association are in the little as little as these villages are. The association trickles down from the state or federal down to those little villages. So they collect whether 100 and 1,000 or something per pickup. Then the local government will collect. Now that takes about 5,000 on a product of about let's say now that cassava is expensive, 130,000. He pays 5,000. That has increased his cost, his own cost to us. Then when we finish producing the products, we'll on our way between here and say Nestle, we will pay local government again. Don't forget we have paid local government from raw material. We will pay local government again and cut tickets. You are going to also have another taxation for something road, you have like that, you pay tickets. Then you now have the unorganized taxation, that is the police and the armies on the road, and they can be like 10, and each of those stop is a minimum of 1,000. In fact, they are fighting now, they don't want 1,000 again, they want 2,000. Otherwise, they delay the truck 2 days, that truck is there. Well, there's nothing we can do about this. These taxations are there. So as an entrepreneur, I simply just put those costs and throw it into the budget and say, well, sorry, even though I should have sold this thing to you at 2 naira, but it's not 2 naira 50 kobo because these taxes are there. However, I believe that we've been advocating. We've advocated even more than this before. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to have to cut in. I would love to ask you to please summarize in the interest of time. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your intervention. We'll come back to you in the question section. I would like to introduce our final panelist, Mr. Lawali Rotimi. Mr. Rotimi is a leading agricultural entrepreneur who is recognized in Africa in the agricultural sector. He's also an international speaker who has addressed global audiences at high-level meetings of various institutions such as the Commonwealth, Harvard University, Wilton Park, the African Union, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization in Africa, the International Labour Organization, Switzerland, the Swiss government, as well as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, amongst others. Mr. Rotimi, you are very welcome to this forum. Hello, Mr. Rotimi, are you there?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Now,
yes.
I would like you to speak like Mrs. Rawley has, from your perspective as an entrepreneur, particularly somebody who is involved in primary production and who has also had the benefits of interacting very widely internationally, to give us a sense of when an external party, whether a potential funder or a potential market, is looking to engage with a growing SME that is in agribusiness, what will they be on the lookout for? And what exactly should our participants be focusing on in building an enduring profile for themselves in the international and the local agribusiness space? Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for having me, and thank you for the preceding speakers who have spoken about the various questions. So for people who are looking to come in, what they should be looking at in agro, I think a point of correction first, we are basically to agro processing.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have nothing to do with direct farming, with primary production. We are basically into processing, and as a company, we work in Nigeria, we work in Rwanda, in the coffee sector in Rwanda, we work in Zambia currently also, and then we have operations in the Netherlands also. Yeah, like the previous speakers spoken about, Mrs. Missy. If you're looking for quick money, don't go into agribusiness. It's quite important, I think, to emphasize that. Because what we have seen, particularly in Nigeria, is that many people are going to agribusiness. They are not going because they are interested in investing or growing the sector. Primarily, they are going into the sector because they have heard or they have read that there's money in the sector and they want to also go and tap that money, So if you have that mindset, agribusiness is definitely not for you, you see. So basically, I would say that if you're looking to build an enduring system, an enduring wealth system, then you can look at doing agribusiness. And you must have, particularly in relation to Nigerian environment, you must have a long-term goal, because there are a lot of challenges militating development of agribusiness in the country, So one of them is infrastructural challenge, Currently now, we know that we have epileptic power supplies in Nigeria, and you want to run a factory, agribusiness factory is extremely difficult for you because you have to rely on generator to run your factory. Yeah, we have bad roads, which your trucks are going to apply to get to the market. This puts a stress on the cost of shipment from your factory to the market. These are key challenges that are facing, processors, agro-processors in the country. So it's important first, I think, to invest in knowledge for anyone who's going to get into agribusiness sector or processing as a new entrant. It's first important to invest in knowledge. Knowledge of getting what a feel of what the sector looks like, a feel of the challenges, a feel of the opportunities, a feel of key things, that would guide your prosperity in the sector. Because what we have seen really is that most people who get into the sector learn based on experience, so it's important to invest in the knowledge, before you venture into it. By getting to learn what are the pros, what are the cons, what are the challenges around agro processing in Nigeria, and this is quite important. Yeah. So also you must have the mindset, which is a mindset of sustainability. Like I said, if you're looking at quick wins, I think it's not your best end, because this is a sector that we have seen that it's the easiest, I would say, is one of the easiest sector to lose money in the country because of the challenges and the shocks around the sector. So if you're looking for quick wins, it's not the right point. So you must have a mindset of sustainability. I think is quite key for anyone who's going to come into the sector, that you are going into it for a long time, not you're going into it so that we can make some quick returns and, you know, throwback. So I think these are key things to look at for people who are looking at coming into the sector as new entrants. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lawali. Another key requirement, not only for agriculture, but it is accentuated for agriculture, because in a lot of instances, what people see in agriculture is what they term to be the risks. In a lot of instances, these risks are dimensioned around environmental factors like climate and pests and all that. So it makes raising money for the agriculture SME, it's much more difficult than it does for people in other sectors. For an organization like yours that has a multinational, so to speak, presence, what has been your experience and what do you suggest to young entrepreneurs and young enterprises that are starting off in agribusiness? What should they be paying attention to in terms of presenting themselves to the financial markets to raise capital for to finance their businesses?
Okay, thank you so much. So the reality is that people only invest in value. People invest in results. I think these are key things to note. If you see a business today that people are putting in their money to, they are doing it because they see results, or they believe that the business will have results, or they believe the business is valuable. So I would say that first thing for people coming in to have a leverage in the financial market is to build that value, to build their business around the value ecosystem. You see, I'll give an example. You know, in Nigeria, we have had this bubble of agri crowdfunding. You know, which the bubble has busted. We have seen it busted over the last couple of months, or you know, yeah, because these are actually not systems that are going to work. So I think it's quite key that the business is built around value, because people invest in value, people invest in results. So for new entrants, I would say that your first focus should not be how you want to get into the financial market, but how you're going to build a value system around your business. What does a business stand for? You know, how much of records do you have to prove to people to bring in money into your business? If we go now and begin to talk about the stories of entrepreneurs who are here on the panel, like myself, like previous panelists who have spoken, you know, it's not as if we entered the market with funding from the first year, or we entered the market with people putting money into the project. Some of us had gone years without any funding support. Some of us have gone years without shareholders coming in, you know. So I think it's important first to use your primary early years, you know, to build a value system around your project. Learn the pros and cons, do the mistake with your own money, build the results, get the numbers. When I mean the numbers, the records, build the records. For example, now, how many what's it called? How many tonnage are you able to do? How are you able to overcome some of the challenges in the sector? Because by the time you're going to the market to get people's funds, you know, you're not getting their funds so that you can use it to lend. You're getting their funds to put to work and get results. So I think it's quite key for young entrepreneurs or new entrants in the sector to invest more in the value system. Build the value system around your business, so that when you get to the market and you're talking from experience, you're talking from the result point of view. And because people invest in results, they invest in value, not just emotions or what you plan to do. Yeah. So I think that's one key. Those are key things to look at.
Okay. A final question. Agricultural processing is about the quality of equipment and the quality of technology that you are able to put behind your processing operation. How best would you advise a young enterprise coming into agricultural processing? how best would you advise them to pick equipment, to pick EPC contractors? What should they be paying attention to in deciding which partners to approach in getting equipment for their processing activity?
Yeah, I think this is flexible and dependent on what you're trying to achieve, because I think this is quite a broad question. It's dependent on what you're trying to achieve. The sector is broad, you see. But what I've seen also is that we have a lot of local machine fabricators. For example, all the machines we are taking to our processing in Zambia, they were fabricated locally in Nigeria. See, yeah. So also, whatever you want to do, you have to look at the regulatory requirements in terms of machineries for it. So, for example, now if you want to do cassava flour, yeah, there's a regulatory requirement for it in terms of machinery. What kind of materials that needs to be used for such machines? Food grade, So there are requirements for it. So I would say that before you select what kind of machinery or how to go about it, get a regulatory requirement for such machines. You know, it could be from the regulatory body. So what are the regulatory requirements you need to have in such machines in terms of quality? And then you can narrow it down to identify local partners or international partners who can get you the machines. You know, but what I've also seen with buying machines internationally is that, yeah, some of them, you know, when you get them, you have to bring in engineers from such countries to help you fix it when it has problem. And, you know, that's why people like us were trying to domesticate getting local machines, you know, so that at least we get the local support alongside with it. So I think this is quite dependent on regulatory requirement based on what the individual is trying to venture into. So I think it's difficult to generalize on what you have to look for. But once you get a regulatory requirement in terms of, for example, now if you want to produce, what's it called, textile starch, you know, if you're doing textile starch, for example, there are a couple of things perhaps the regulators may overlook in terms of machinery quality, machine quality. But some of these things may not be overlooked when it comes to food grade starch, you see. So I think it's quite broad. So it depends on what you want to do, and then you can get the information from regulatory requirements to set it up. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawali. We have so far answered questions regarding choosing the right agro-processing business, to venture into understanding the agro-processing market, agro-processing economies in the circular markets, starting with an agro-processing agribusiness and investing in an agro-processing agribusiness. We'll go on another short break. When we are back, we'll entertain questions from you, the audience. Thank you very much. Welcome back. Our technical team has been collating some of your questions, and our panelists will answer them now. We would like to welcome live participants to ask questions from our participants, and we'll be from our participants. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Shamaka Ikechukwu. So about I'm the CEO of Nisho Agro Services, which is currently into cracking and separating of palm kernel. So I just have 2 questions. Although my question is not really into what the people that have spoken to us, the speakers, what they said, but is still in line. So I just want to ask, in the sense of marketing, assuming you have customers now, like you have a customer that comes once in a while and buys plenty things, and then you also have another customer that comes consistently, like let me say every day or 2 times in a week or 3 times in a week, but the person buys in small quantities. Who should be considered more as a customer? Then secondly, if you want to encourage your customers
like someone that, like you have a customer that buys, that particular customer that buys in little quantity, what's the kind of encouragement that you should give that person that is consistent? Thank you very much.
I will have both Mrs. Rawley and Mr. Lawali respond to that question in turn. So we should start with Mrs. Rawley. You are on mute, Mrs. Rawley. Mrs. Rawley, you're on mute.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I didn't know I was on mute. Yeah, okay.
She wants to know, Shamaka, can you repeat that question briefly?
Can you hear me?
Please
Yes, I can
question.
hear you. Sorry, please just do a summary. I think I didn't get that well.
Okay, I said, assuming you have a customer, like you have, okay, there are two customers now. One of them comes steadily and buys things from you, but the person buys in little quantity. And then you have another person that buys in bulk and buys so much, but the person is not consistent, who should be considered more as a customer. And then secondly, that, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, secondly,
I can hear you clearly. Let me just hear the second part.
Okay, secondly, that person that buys in little quantity, what kind of encouragement can you give to the person that's for the person to improve? So that's just the question I have. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, there's what we call grow your customer. The person who comes in once in a year and buys one, you cannot do a projection with that person. You cannot give the bank that one and they will see it as anything serious. Now, that customer that buys small, but consistently, you can plan with that customer. So that's your key customer. Two, how do you help that customer? Help the customer to grow. Look at the product the customer is producing. You can help the customer to do something like a mini research and say, okay, maybe you are producing, what do you produce?
Palm kernel nuts.
You exactly, palm kernel nuts. You could go into the internet and try and, what are the other, come again? The internet and find out other things you can use palm kernel nut to do and suggest to this your small customer with the aim of helping him to buy more from you. So you can help that customer fine-tune his system. You can visit the customer, look at the customer's site and provide some solutions to help the customer to perform much better. You can even give the customer some little rebate. Such a customer, you can give him some little credit so that he can buy more and grow more. Because that customer, surely, if he grows, will stay with you. Now, the other big one too, you will not throw the person, that customer also away. What you will do with the customer to see how you can talk to the customer. Maybe he has about 10 clients that he buys, some 10 cashew, some 10 customers he buys the same product from. So he's only buy from this one this month, this one that month. You now try to woo that big customer to buy more from you. You try and understand what are the other people doing to him that you are not doing. Maybe it's the price, maybe it's the quality, maybe it's the fact that those ones bring it to his factory. He does not come to their factory to come and pick it. You look at why is he buying only once when he can buy 10 times in a year. When he's buying every month, you now try and shift your ground a little bit so that that customer from buying once a year can start to buy maybe 5 times a year and so on. So both of them are important, but for me, I will first of all go for the small customer and try and ensure that that customer grows, because that one already likes me and have accepted me as a stay on. So I'll help that one to grow. I'll go back to the big one and say, why are you not buying more? What can I do to help you buy more? You try and engage them and discuss with them. From there, you pick the reason why they are buying only once from you. Then you try and adjust a little bit so they can buy more. So you can keep the two of them. But the strategy to totally different.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rawley.
I hope.
So,
Yes, sir.
okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Rawley. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking questions now. So if you'll be kind enough to post your questions in the comment section, I will read them out and direct them to the appropriate person. Mrs. Miriam Yaks, my question is, how do we get buyers for our agro-processed products? We have over 10 products we process, and we are registered with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. I think this question is well suited to Mr. Lawali. Mr. Lawali, could you please learn from your experience to how one addresses this kind of requirement of a small business? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. If the business is small, I think having 10 products is too much. Yeah, because the number of your products or the number of activities you're doing has an impact on your management. So if you are a small agribusiness and you have 10 products that you are producing, I don't know how you're able to manage that, but you may first want to consider reducing the number of your products to have some focus. On getting markets, from my experience in Nigeria, I've seen that most people go into agribusiness with the mindset of people must eat. You say, no, I want to start producing Gary because people always eat. Yeah, people always eat Gary, but how are you sure it's your own Gary they want to eat? You know? So the thing you do is you go after the market. You don't assume market, you go after them. I'll give an example. When we started producing coffee in Rwanda 4 years ago, yeah, before we launched the product, I remember we produced samples. I came to Nigeria with samples. I met with hotels. I met with coffee shops, restaurants, testing the samples. For over 6 months, we were doing marketing. I was in Washington, D.C. I spent 16 days in D.C., going from shop to shop, meeting with shop owners, meeting with supermarkets, So I think it's quite important for you to identify who your potential market buyers are. And then you take your products to them. So if you are producing, for example, let's say you're producing chicken. So who are the buyers of the chicken? So we are talking about restaurants. We are talking about hotels in this case. We're talking about maybe some end users, home use. So you highlight who your potential customers are. And then you go after them from your city or wherever you are. So you go after them and go and market your product to them. So I think from my own experience, that's the way we have been able to build market for our product. So you don't assume market, you identify who your buyers are, and then you go after them. I think that's the easiest way you can do that. And we also see, for example, now we see commercial banks, they go to campuses, they tell people to come and open accounts. Some of them not even go on the streets, they go to the market. You see them wear the bank t-shirt and they go to market from shop to shop. They ask you, do you have an account with our bank? Can we open for you? These are the benefits you can get from it. So you don't assume market. You go out. You go all out for the market. You go aggressively after the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Famous Onyema. This question is also for Mr. Lawali. He says, can you please educate him on the pitfalls to avoid in going into fish processing, fish drying specifically, and how to secure market for it?
So I can't speak about pitfall for fish market, for fish processing, because I'm not into fish processing. So it's difficult for me to speak as an authority on that. However, on how to secure market, I have talked about it. If you're a fish processor and you need to identify who are the buyers of the fish, maybe you're talking about beer parlor now who use it for pepper soup. You're talking about hotels and restaurants. Yeah, so you go after them. Let's say you're in Lagos, so you list them. Where are the beer parlors in my area? Where are the hotels in my area? You go after them, you take your samples to them, and you discuss business with them. I think that's the easiest way or the simplest way, and what we also see other people do, other companies, even the big organizations. And now in the world of social media, you can also market your product online. And then you can even do advertisement, promote your products, by doing paid ad so that people can see your product and possibly buy it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawali. Another question for you from Izuchukwu Peter Okafo. Mr. Lawali, can you mention a few pros and cons of agro-processing from your experience?
Okay, so I think I'd mentioned some of them while speaking, but if we narrow it down to Nigeria, I would say, well, things you should need to look out for is you need to be able to look out for issues around infrastructural challenges. I'm privileged to work in 4 countries now with our business. And I would say that the infrastructural challenges in Nigeria is quite enormous and it's quite unique. Unique in the sense that it looks unending, you know. It's not as if last year it was this year it has improved. You know, it's like last year has improved, but this year is worse, you know. So you need to look out for issues around infrastructural challenges. It's quite important because it can determine the pace of your business. It can determine if your business will succeed or not. For example, now, in our factory and in Nigeria, I look at our diesel consumption, it's quite high. You know, this is not the same with other countries where we operate. And this is basically because there's no electricity supply in Nigeria, as you would expect to have in a factory. You know, that's one key thing you have to look out for. Also, on the issue of human capacity is another thing you have to look out for. You know, there's a huge human capacity gap in Nigeria. For you to get a manager, for example, now is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Yeah, you may get the qualification of a manager, but what are the soft skill needed to sustain the person as a manager? You know, it's the gap is there. I would always say, for example, now one of the biggest challenges in Nigeria is not just unemployment, but unemployability, because most of some of the graduates we have today are not employable. You put them on the job, they are looking for what to steal. You put them in the job, their attitude about the job is terrible. You know, so I think these are key things to look at that determines your business. And you look at the source of raw material. How do you get your raw material to process in the factory? Because if you have a factory with machines and then you don't have sustainable supply of raw materials, you have only established a museum, you know. So you need to ensure your raw materials, sustainable supply of raw materials into your factory. And then market assurance. You also have to go after the market to ensure that you have your product is secured, bought by customers. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is for Mrs. Rawley. Obtaining government approval for land entails a significant amount of physical and financial effort. How do you manage it?
This is a very huge question.
That question was from Oluwafunjo Abiola.
It's one of the major pain points for agricultural. Yeah, it's one of the major pain points for Nigeria agricultural sector. The amount of money required to, first of all, get your land survey red copy is enormous. Not to talk of CFO. Well, I would say it's part of your takeoff capital. It's part of your seed capital. You have to see it as seed, because if you don't get it, you can't get bank loans. If you don't get it, your plant is not secured. So the only way to manage it is to just see it as seed. So when you are putting down monies that are required for your business, that money for your CFO or land perfection should be part of it and should be seen as sunk capital. There's no way around it. There's no how you can play around it. It's a capital, it's part of the capital that you need. If you do it, it actually increases the value of your land, and then you can be fit to apply for a loan, okay, and use it as collateral. But until you get it, you don't have any asset that is tangible for you to provide as collateral. So I see it as seed. It's seed capital for me. That's the way I look at it.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. I think the next question is again best suited for Mr. Lawali, because he seems to be more engaged on the retail side of business. The question is from Jilam Glory, and Jilam is asking to be given insights to negotiations with potential clients. For example, stores. I want to believe that will be to sell or distribute the agro-processed products to potential off-takers. Ms. Lawali, please.
Okay, so I think I would speak from our own experience on insight on negotiation. So basically, I want to assume that this person has a long-term goal in business. So when we basically are trying to negotiate with customers, we look at business in GR firms from the service point of view, not from the buy and sell point of view. When I mean service point of view, I'll give you an example. So we service a couple of organizations with coffee in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. And we look at it more from the service in the sense that we go to them, understand their needs. So some of them need coffee machines, for example, because they've been taking instant coffee and they don't use machine for instant coffee. We go to them and we tell them that, okay, you know what, we can give you these machines for free, So, and then they accept it. And then the machine belongs to us, it's on a free list with them. We have that with a lot of hotels across Nigeria. And then we're tied to purchase of our coffee. So basically negotiation around business should not be about buy. It should be about what your customer also stand to benefit working with you. I think it's important that because for you to have sustainable relationship with customers, I see this across Europe, I see this across the US. Business owners are building sustainable relationship from the service point of view. So I will encourage anyone who is going to negotiation, particularly as a small business, for you to have sustainable customer relationship. Look at how you can add value to your customers. It's not about bring your money, come and buy my product. But for example, now we have organizations we are servicing for the last 4 years in coffee. They can't pull out because our machines are seated with them. They can't pull out because we are offering services such as trainings to them. They can't pull out because we are reviewing their menus for them from time to time, free of charge. You see, so negotiation basically is not about come and buy my product. I'm going to sell it for you 2 naira. Can you buy it for 2.5 naira? It's about looking for mutual value sharing, mutual value that you can share. Your customer feels important about using your product. I think these are key things that needs to be understood about negotiation.
Okay. Mr. Lawali, I think this question will also be directed at you. Mrs. Miriam Yaks, who asked the question earlier, is trying to put perspective to the question she asked, which you also answered. And she's saying, how do I get international buyers? We have local buyers already. How do we get international buyers?
Okay, so for me, okay. So getting international buyers, number one, I think it's important to note that international buyers does not mean Europe and America or China alone. International buyers could be other African countries, because I think a lot of times when people talk about international buyers from Nigeria, they're thinking of Europe, they're thinking of the US or China. I was speaking in a seminar recently and I told people, like, when we're talking of export, there are a lot of African countries who need what we produce in Nigeria. And when you sell to them, you get the same Forex you're going to get if you send to Europe or you send to the US. So I think it's quite important to have that in mind. Now, there are 2 ways I would suggest. Number one is, of course, the use of social media, use of internet media to reach out. Sorry, there are 3 actually. The use of social media. Number 2 is use of embassies. So, for example, in GR firms, we have a lot of relationship with embassies of nations. So as a business, you can walk into the embassy of some countries where you think you can get your buyers. Let's say, take, for example, the embassy of the United States. You can walk into their embassy, you go to their website, pick their email. They have a commercial wing in the embassy. Send an email to them about your company. In the past, we have had meetings with the commercial wing of the embassy of the US. Send an email to them, tell them about what you do. Yeah, they have their verification process of businesses, etc. So you can write to Embassy of the UK. You can write. Currently, we have a good relationship with Embassy of the Netherlands. You write to them, hold meetings with them, show them what you are doing. They have also people in their country who are looking perhaps for products you are producing, and they can create this. They can bridge this gap for you. That's quite important. So you can make use of these embassies to leverage and get customers. And lastly is, of course, doing your raw marketing yourself by traveling to some of these countries to pitch your product to potential buyers. Yeah, I think those are things you may want to look at.
Okay, Mrs. Rawley, you wanted to chip in answering that question that Mr. Lawali just answered. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. I said that, yes, everything he said is correct. Maybe the last thing I will say is personal research. You get customers through personal research. Go online, go into the LinkedIn, and go into the space of what you want to produce, and you can get links from LinkedIn, from conferences, from referrals, apart from all the other points that Mr. Lawali has mentioned. But more of personal research, you get foreign buyers from there. Going into the internet, use your LinkedIn, try and going into the sector where you want to sell, and then you can get buyers from there. You can also register on some selling platforms, some international selling platforms. You can also get buyers when you register on some international selling platforms. They will contact you when they see that you have those products, in addition to everything that my brother has said.
Okay, Missy Rawley, there is actually a question that seems to be directed at you. I'll take that question subsequent to this one. But this question is from Madino Bless in Bidomti. Says, can we know countries with bilateral trade agreements with Nigeria on agro-processed products? I will leave both Missy Rawley and Mr. Lawali to contribute to that to the extent of their knowledge of such bilateral agreements, that is.
Okay. So
bilateral agreement will really get the lead. Okay.
What?
Okay, yeah, let me just quickly say this. That bilateral agreement will easily get this from trade. The Ministry of Trade will give a total list. So if you go on the website of Ministry of Trade, you should be able to get it all. NEPC, Nigeria Export Promotion Council. You will also get a list of all the companies, all the countries that Nigeria have bilateral agreement with, most especially if you go into their website. Otherwise, walk up to them. But I know we have it the US, I know we have it Europe, some countries in Europe, because I know some of our products go to the US. On cassava, we have Europe, we have a bit of South Africa, I think, yes, in some product. Now, the way it is done product specific. They are not giving a blanket bilateral agreement for all products. So even though they may say, oh, we have bilateral agreement with South Africa, for example, it could be only 2 products that leave Nigeria to South Africa. Other product might not be certified okay. So for you to exactly know which product is certified okay for South Africa, for example, even though we have a bilateral agreement, you now have to go to NEPC or the Ministry of Trade to get the real specific products and item, and even the CFA and all of that. They have all of those things. Those informations are available.
Okay. In Bidomti, can I give you these websites to check out? It was provided by Mr. Lawali. www.tradingeconomics.com. I think you can get additional information about countries we have bilateral trade agreements with from there.
Actually, trading economics is like a one-stop point for anyone who's looking for international business. It's a point where you can look at data of various countries. So you see their trade balance sheet, you see the import and export, you see the products they import, you see the countries they are importing for their largest trading partners. You can go on the website, you see the currency, you see banking, financial sector information, remittances, etc. So if she goes on that website, she can get an idea of countries Nigeria is importing from, Nigeria is exporting to, the kind of product Nigeria is allowed to export to those countries, etc. Yeah. So it's like a one-stop point that gives you like an insight on economic matters.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lawali. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your participation in this session of the Business of Agriculture series. As much as we love to continue with the question and answer session, we have to end this session now. We have had an amazing time sharing experience, and we hope you have picked up some tips for yourself. I would like to leave you with an encouragement that whatever you have decided to do in agro-processing, please focus on it, be tenacious about it, gather information about it, learn about it, and actually go out and do it. I want to thank you for joining this session of the Business of Agriculture and Value Addition, and I wish you a pleasant day ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you, our panelists.
There's a story to be told, a future to behold. There is more to who we are than what they hear. We have love within our soul, fire in our bones. We've got everything it takes to make it here. There's much more within our soil, more than just our oil. We can grow